In a very heated debate about Donald Trump and fascism, progressive journalist and friend of the show, Mehdi Hasan, brutally humiliated Piers Morgan and called him out to his face about his false equivalences and both sidesism in a desperate attempt to launder Donald Trump's obvious corruption and authoritarianism. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as usual, definitely check out the full conversation on Piers Morgan Uncensored. It is worth every second, but we're going to start with this clip here.
Maybe, I mean, or that they do understand what it means and they like it. And this is the slight problem. All of the polling shows, Piers, that the Republican base has become more authoritarian over the last 5-10 years, has become more open to strongman rule, do call Donald Trump daddy because they like the idea of a strong leader, have told pollsters time and again that they're happy for Trump to ignore court rulings and ignore Congress and take more power for himself, which he's done, by the way. He has defied court orders, has defied the Supreme Court. And look, we can argue back and forth about the word fascist, just like on Ghazi, you and I have argued about the word genocide. What we can't argue about, and surely what you cannot deny, is that America right now is going through an authoritarian moment. Most political scientists and scholars of democracy are saying American democracy is in decline, is going backwards, is regressing. We are seeing a much more authoritarian approach to government. The Republican Party is enabling Donald Trump's worst excesses. Again, call them whatever you want, authoritarian, illiberal, fascist. And these kids, quote unquote, they're all adults, but yes, young Americans, sitting in that warehouse with me, I don't think they're just ignorant. I actually do think they're taking their cues from the top. They are saying this stuff because Donald Trump has emboldened them. These views, Piers, as you well know, you lived in the United States, these views have been around for decades. But they were said in private. They were said in people's homes. They were said on some weird internet message board. They've become emboldened to say this stuff out loud because the leader of the country says similar stuff out loud. When they say to me, I'm not a real American, I should be deported, denaturalized. I mean, Donald Trump, Piers, is openly saying that Zohran Mamdani, the Muslim American citizen candidate for mayor of New York, is maybe here illegally. Maybe we have to investigate his citizenship based on nothing. They sat at the RNC and held up placards saying mass deportations now. They didn't just mean quote unquote illegal immigrants, Piers. That's become very clear.
No, but you know what's
So we're going to play, again, more of this, but for context, so Mehdi Hasan went on Jubilee, which is this wildly popular, program in which liberals and conservatives, I don't know if it's all political. The ones I see obviously are political, and I would react to them more, but I think that they have copyright issues that forbid you from doing so, so that's why we haven't reviewed it. But, Mehdi Hasan's been on there, Adam Mockler, Destiny, Sam Cedar, the biggest names in liberal and progressive politics. These powerhouse debaters have all been on there. IRI, friend of the show, IRI, he's also been on there. I almost jumped ahead of myself about an announcement. I'm not going to zip that. But so Mehdi Hasan goes on within the past couple of days, and it's supposed to be pitched as 20 far-right Republicans or far-right conservatives debate a progressive. And a lot of these people are far-right, even by far-right standards, and are self-proclaimed fascists. And so the whole thing went viral, and that was the predicate for this conversation. We're going to hear a little bit more and then jump to the next clip.
Interesting. It's like I interviewed Joy Reid the other day, right, who was obviously at MSNBC for a long time, and she started ranting away about Trump and the deportation stuff that's going on. I just said to her, okay, how many people did Obama deport?
Okay.
No.
So this is his go-to gotcha. He's done this to Mehdi, Destiny. I think he's done it to Sam Cedar. I know he's done it to Mehdi and Destiny. And it's such a bullshit thing because I shouldn't say this. Most people who complain about Trump's deportations are not necessarily complaining about the number of deportations, the volume of deportations, because President Obama did deport a lot of people. President Biden deported a lot of people. It's the way in which they are done. It's the violations of civil liberties and due process that are uniquely Trumpian and that have not been attributed to President Obama or Biden. And again, this is a false equivalence that Mehdi tries to educate Piers on. Like there's a reason that nobody gives a shit about Obama, and it has nothing to do with hypocrisy.
Presidential history. So, my question for you about this would be, okay, I don't happen to think Trump has been that authoritarian. I think he pushes the courts as hard as he can.
Why?
But then he reigns back.
He's defied court orders.
The people that have been deported, where there was a big blow up and contention about it, they've come back and they're facing due process. That's not what an authoritarian does.
Not true.
He's cleaned
That's
up.
just not true, Peter.
Well, on the southern border, for example, I presume you would praise Trump for stemming the number of people coming illegally there, or would you not?
No, I don't praise somebody who tortures people in detention centres, and I don't think you should either. And you said a lot of things that weren't true. With regard to Joy Reid, who's a good friend of mine, I believe that what she meant, well, I'll tell you in a second. Let me just deal with Joy Reid. I believe Joy was talking about not caring because it's not relevant. I mean, Joy can speak for herself, but that's my interpretation of what she said. It's not relevant. Obama, first of all, and you tried this gotcha on me, I've written pieces in The Guardian attacking Obama's deportation record. It was a very bad record. And I've been critical of Joe Biden's immigration record. I was on MSNBC attacking Joe Biden's immigration record for being too Republican-esque. But that is not relevant to right now, because when we're talking about deportations, we're not just talking about numbers at the southern border. We're talking about what ICE is doing in what's called the interior of America, in LA, on the streets of New York, grabbing people off the streets, masked agents with no badges, no IDs, unmarked cars, grabbing American citizens, doing racial profiling of Latino gardeners or customers at Home Depot, putting them in detention, disappearing them like fascist countries do. When American citizens, veterans, a disabled veteran in LA, Piers, just disappeared off the street for 3 days. His family don't know where he's in. That is Pinochet Chile style.
But do you
stuff,
agree?
Right? I'm not saying it's the same, but I'm saying that is reminiscent. Okay. No, hold on, Piers. You had a long thing about, I just need to deal with your points, and you come back in. Okay. He has defied court orders. The Washington Post just did a study the other day of 160 lawsuits brought against him. They've defied 1 in 3 of those lawsuits. He hasn't given due process to people in El Salvador. People were tortured, Piers, in El Salvador. Kilmar Abrego Garcia talks about being sat on his knees all night long, being beaten, being deprived of food.
Well, actually, a lot of people have said that's nonsense.
I did. You opposed George Bush.
All right, before I continue, I just want to make sure, because it's hard to keep like the timestamps for these clips. Because again, you should watch the full thing, the full episode. Before Mehdi comes on, Piers interviews a conservative historian. This guy's affiliated, I think, with the Daily Wire, and I know Megyn Kelly, so you should definitely check that out. And then the full conversation with Mehdi. So we're going to finish up a little bit here and jump to the next clip.
But it's not nonsense. People have, what are you talking about? Congress members have gone to Alligator Alcatraz in Florida and talked about 35 people to a room, drinking water out of the toilets that they have to do a number 2 in. You opposed the Iraq war. I assume you opposed Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib at the time. I don't quite remember. But this is torture. This is what Trump, the guy you say is not authoritarian, is doing. And he's doing it to American citizens.
Yeah.
Such a great point by Mehdi that, listen, it's, again, even if you're a progressive who disagrees with the volume of the Biden and Obama deportations, even there, what Mehdi is saying is that it's a breed apart from what Trump is doing. We have no evidence of the sort of mass civil liberties and human rights violations that have been attributed to the Trump administration in the past 6 weeks. And the thing about Mehdi that I really appreciate, and again, a lot of people, I try to do this, but I struggle with it because sometimes you can just get overwhelmed by like, okay, I want to say this, and this. He has a good mind. Destiny's really good at this too, of going back and saying, okay, I need to address the previous things that you said that were false. He doesn't let those falsehoods skip him by. He says, okay, I'll address this, but I need to get to this first. And then he goes in sequential order. Good on Mehdi for pushing back on this notion that Donald Trump complies with court orders. It's bullshit. Some court orders he complies with, other court orders he violates surreptitiously. Other court orders still he violates egregiously, and we've covered them in various videos. And yes, he did defy the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court says you need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and the Trump administration just doesn't do it until it does later, that is a defiance of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court didn't say, hey, do it in 6 months. Do it when it's convenient for you. They're like, get on it. Facilitate his return, because you violated his civil liberties and the law by deporting him to, I think it was Venezuela, in the first place. So good on Mehdi for pushing back on this, because what Piers does, either for clicks or because they're friends, is he takes Trump at face value. When Trump says, I'll obey the courts, Piers is like, well, see, there you go. Trump says he'll obey the courts. Now, what's ironic about that is Piers will later say, you can't judge Trump based on what he says. But that's exactly what Piers does when it's convenient. When Trump says he'll obey the courts, but doesn't, Piers wants to give him credit for just saying he'll support the courts in the first place, even if his actions don't follow suit. On the contrary, he also says, if Trump says a terrible thing, then don't necessarily blame him for it unless he does it. Now, I'm of the opinion that words of the President of the United States matter. Actions matter more, but yes, even the President's words matter. And so when Trump says a terrible thing, I'm not going to give him credit for the instances that he says a terrible thing but doesn't follow through, because saying the terrible thing when you're that powerful matters. I digress. Here's the next clip.
Okay, so millions. do you accept that reducing that to just a few thousand a month is a good thing?
Not if it ends the right to asylum, which is America's right under America's obligation, apologies, under international law and American law. Donald Trump, no, hold on, Piers. You can't just elide that. Donald Trump has ended the right to asylum effectively in this country. That is outrageous. It is illegal.
But he hasn't, though, has he?
Do you support ending the right to asylum?
No,
he has. He has, actually. He's ended the right to asylum.
You can still claim asylum.
No, that's not true, Piers.
You can.
That's not true. That is not true.
You can still claim asylum in the United States.
ICE agents are picking up. Piers, no. In fact, not only can you not claim asylum at the southern border, you're being rejected, but people in the middle of asylum hearings in courtrooms in America, on camera, are being grabbed in the middle of their asylum hearings by ICE officers. Judges are calling this out, Piers. And I assume, again, you support a right to asylum as a British citizen.
I do.
The UK, the US, every developed country.
I do,
supports
but I also...
a right to asylum. Donald Trump has ended that. And by the way, Stephen Miller is openly opposed to that. So there's no point defending people who don't want you to defend them.
I'm not defending anybody.
They're openly opposed to this.
I'm about to tell you that I think that I think the fact that we
both
agree...
to praise Trump's record at the border.
Look, I think
Trump's horrific record.
I think if Trump had stuck to deporting people who committed crimes when they're undocumented in the United States, that would have had widespread approval. I do not like...
which every president
I do not like this chilling sense of fear that everyone undocumented in America currently has.
Yeah, but that they do, and that's because of Trump. This is where I get... It's so frustrating to hear centrists talk about Trump. Well, if Trump did this other thing, if Trump did this thing he didn't do, wouldn't that have been great? Maybe. But he didn't do that. He did that thing that you now just say you don't like. So you want me to give him credit for something he didn't do, whereas you try to softball him the blame, like you try to ease up on the blame for something he actually did. It's staggering. The dissonance is staggering. Praise him for the hypothetical. Don't judge him too harshly on the reality, even though I don't like it either. I don't get it. I just don't think I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is there's just no good faith way to defend Trump when Trump is so corrupt and so authoritarian and so just stupid. It's just like being the world's smartest flat earther. It's like, sure, you're a smart guy. I think Piers Morgan is a really smart guy, but the facts are so squarely against you, and you are having to tie yourself into knots to create a false equivalence here, to give him some cover. And in this clip, Mehdi really calls him out on that.
I agree with a lot of it, probably along with you. I just don't think that you can ignore, as Joy Reid wanted to, what Obama did for 8 years as a Democrat president and as a black as the first black president.
Piers, come on, Piers. I get that you need to do this both sides shtick for your show, but Obama is not relevant. Obama did not defy the Supreme Court.
I actually do look at both sides.
Well, okay, point to me. Well, Piers, point to me then. I'll give you as long. I've got to go soon, but I'll give you as long as you want before I go. When did Obama defy the Supreme Court on immigration? He didn't. When did he defy lower court judges? He didn't. Joe Biden didn't either. So we're talking about the courts here, right? Judges, Trump-appointed judges, Piers. A Trump-appointed judge said earlier this year that an American child was expelled, deported from this country, even though you can't legally deport an American citizen, but was kidnapped and taken out of this country without meaningful process. That is the words of a Trump-appointed judge. You cannot find an equivalent for Barack Obama, and I carry no water for Obama on immigration. One thing I've got to say on undocumented folks, some of these people, not just here a few years, they picked up an Iranian woman, a grandmother in her front yard gardening, who'd been here since 1979. She came as a child. Her family claimed asylum after the Iranian Revolution. They picked up and detained her. This is insane. And by the way, the polls show, Piers, that Americans do want deportations, but when they're asked more detailed questions, do you support people who've been here for many years? Do you support people who've committed no crimes? Do you support deporting people who want a pathway to citizenship? They don't support deporting those people. They support, like you and I do, deporting violent criminals, which Biden was doing, Trump did, Obama did. Everyone agrees on that. What he's doing right now, and what Stephen Miller is doing, Piers, just so your viewers know, Stephen Miller went to ICE and said, you better round up 3,000 people a day. He's given them an arbitrary number. And ICE people are saying, we can't do this. It's not possible. He said, just go to 7-Eleven, go to Home Depot, and just round people up. They're doing racial profiling, Piers. They're just grabbing brown people, Latino folks off the streets who are American citizens.
And again, the whole thing is just, it's fascinating. Mehdi does an amazing job. You should watch the whole thing, but good on him for pushing back and also pointing back the polls, because so often Piers tries to appeal to Trump's alleged popularity. I want to be very clear about this. Piers, if you're watching, like and subscribe, please. Number one, Trump is objectively unpopular. He's less popular than Joe Biden. He's less popular than Barack Obama. He's less popular than George Bush. He is the least popular president at this point in the timeline than any president on record, with the sole exception of himself in term one. Objectively unpopular. He won the popular vote this last time by a plurality, not a majority, which means more people voted against him than voted for him. So I know he's your friend, Piers, if you're watching, but he is objectively unpopular. And you can say, what about the Democrats? And yes, Democrats right now are even less popular. I own it. You should own the fact that your guy is objectively unpopular and always has been in the aggregate. And Democrats are generally more popular than he. Hillary Clinton was more popular. Barack Obama was more popular. Joe Biden was more popular. It's simply a fact. But even on this issue of immigration and deportations, Trump is just underwater in poll after poll after poll after poll after poll after poll after poll. He totally shit away. He pissed away his polling advantage on immigration because he's done this in such a chaotic, vicious way that even America, who has become desensitized unnecessarily, I think, regrettably, to so many excesses, even they're like, Jesus, you're totally fucking this up. So yes, he's unpopular on pretty much every issue. Yes, that is a political failure. Yes, we are right. We liberals and progressives are right to mock him for it. No, you can't adequately defend it. Good for Mehdi Hasan pushing back on Piers in this sense and not letting Piers get away with this idea that, the polls back Trump. They don't, and they haven't in months. He's unpopular, and he's unpopular on every issue. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.